Our first assignment, details can be found in the Canvas page under Modules and under Assignment Sheets. And assignment sheets are where we start. You want to read through them. You can download them by clicking on them. You can preview them by using a little preview window. They are PDFs, so you're able to view them or print them anywhere you like. And what I like about making an assignment sheet like this for you is it's just a one-page brief, a short description of your assignment. So this is similar to what an art director might give you for a job. And our first job is to make black and white contrast studies. So we're going to combine a series of 3 square format photographic compositions. And they're going to be arranged on a single white 10 by 8 inch horizontal format. So this is like getting an art direction job for a magazine. It's a fixed format. It's a certain size. They need to be square format, 3 next to each other within that space. And each exposure is supposed to showcase severely reduced saturation. So monochrome, black and white, sepia, or some other monochromatic scale like Cibachrome. And we are trying to feature in these exposures extremes and naturalistic contrast. So we're not trying to process them like an 80s music video to look really strange and contrasted. We're trying to capture naturalistic contrast as it exists through our lens. And how do we do this? We're going to be showing off our ability to manipulate light, the different qualities of light: direct, diffused, filtered, reflected, natural, and artificial. So we want to be prepared for a critique at the beginning of class on the critique date that's in our course outline. Just because this is our first assignment, let me be explicitly clear on that. So when we go to our first day stuff, and this is why we wanted to print out our course outline and keep it in our sketchbook so we can refer to it easily. You will see on it that where you have things in red, those are assignments. So today we are introducing assignment 1, and it is due for critique next class, which means between the end of this class and the beginning of next class, you are going to shoot your exposures for this assignment, and then we will process them in class. I'll be demoing a little bit today on how we're going to process them, putting them together and submitting them to PhotoBucket for critique in class. And then next class we introduce assignment 2 and we do the whole thing again. And then a week from today we'll be critiquing assignment 2 in class. So we're now picking up steam. Sometimes assignments will have multiple days. Assignment 3 is quite difficult, introduces a lot of new content. So we'll have a couple of days in class to work on that before it's due. But everything's in your course outline. So this gives you a lot of tips for how to approach the project, but it's very hard to get a sense of that from just words. So I'm going to skip all that for now, but you should always be reading through your assignment sheets to make sure you're not missing any details. The way assignments are graded is between 0 and 3 points. And the only way to get 0 points is to not turn anything in by the deadline. If you turn something in by the deadline, even if it's not finished, even if it's just a sketch, an idea of what you're going to do, even if it's just a picture that you had left over in your camera, right? One that you took in your pocket accidentally. As long as you have your name on it and you've submitted it to the right folder, that's like telling your art director that you're aware of the assignment, that you're working on it. So I call that acknowledging the deadline. It doesn't get you much, but it gets you 1 point. And that allows you to resubmit the project for more points later on. So you can keep working on it and perfecting it. 2 points is what a lot of people get when they first turn it in, because they've done their best to meet all the requirements, but I know they can do better. And there's certain things that can improve the photo, make it a better portfolio piece. 3 points is what you get when it's really as good as you can make it, and it really engages the viewer as something other than just a technical exercise in a class. All right, just some general tips for taking your exposures. You're going to take a lot more shots than you need so that you can edit down to the 3 that have the best contrast from each other and highlight strong contrast and value range. So this is important. I'm defining good contrast, good black and white contrast, as having strong contrast and value range. So what do I mean by that? I asked you to go to image search in Google and to look up black and white contrast exposures. And when you do that under images, you'll see a variety of subject matter. I'm not limiting it for any kind of size. But there's kind of 2 things that are meant when people say contrast. And I want to be specific about what I mean for this class and for controlling our photography. One type of contrast is called posterization. And that's when you really exaggerate the lights and darks and you push them all the way to the edges. So this to me is not a good contrast photo. It is definitely high contrast, but it doesn't have any of those gray values in between. So all the whites are blasted out, all the blacks are really, really deep, and you lose a lot of visual texture. Instead, this is my idea of a good contrast photo for this class. You have solid whites, you have solid blacks, but you also have the full range of grays in between. And that shows really good control of your exposures. Okay, so what do you guys think this one is? Is this more posterized or is this more full value range contrast?
I want to say most posterized.
Yeah, if there's information lost in it, and there's obviously a lot of information lost. Yeah. So it could be shot with just as bright lights and just as dark shadows and still see all the form. That would be better value range. So this looks more posterized. So the reason we might use Google image search is to find the kind of contrast shot that we like the most individually. Whether we love portraiture, whether we love action, whether we love landscape, whether we love still life. This is a nice conceptual one here. And you find an exemplar piece for yourself and then save that to the desktop. The piece I like is this one.
It's a lizard.
Yep, just a close-up of a lizard's hand, but shot with such clarity and such precise lighting that it seems like each scale is a slightly different gray value, right? It is really, really precisely done. And if we look at the histogram of this, you can do this with your exemplar. You go to Tools under Preview and adjust color. You'll see the histogram. You'll see that it's a really lopsided histogram. So contrast isn't always the best exposure, but this is the finished picture. And you see it's pushing so much into the darks that it's a lopsided mound. But I still think it's incredibly effective. But what you can tell from a good contrast exposure with all the value range is there's nothing absent from the histogram. There's no area where there's just no content. And that means there's grays all across that range. Even when it gets to the bright whites, there's very few. That means that this isn't quite bright white yet, but there is some. And then if I adjusted it all, you know, if I bring the whites up and I darken the darks, it just loses its full range. It doesn't look as good. So that's why this is my exemplar. All right. You can also go to PhotoBucket in getting ready for assignments. Go to Library and look at past student examples of this project. And this is before we go out and get our exposures. So now we're in photo assignments, assignment 1, looking at past student examples. And the reason they're called contrast studies is because we're not just taking one photo. Instead, we are putting 3 side by side. And you'll notice that they're not all purely black and white. That's because in real photography, there is no such thing as purely black and white. There's always some form of color to the inks or to the processing you're using, whether it's more sepia toned like this or more sienna type like this. So we're going to talk about limited monochrome color. All right. So with that in mind, with both the assignment sheet and the past student examples, and maybe doing a Google image search and finding professional examples that you like, this is how we get started before we take our shots.